Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video. I know it has been a while. I've been busy with real life things and work, but we're back today with a new video, this time showing off a deck profile for the One Piece limited battle. So what happened now, if you attended a super pre-release, you were able to get the starter decks early with the special super pre-release stamp. Pretty cool. So what these limited battles are doing is, if you had access to more than one deck, you can pretty much slap them together, and that's what you're going to use in the tournament. The One Piece card game comes out in December, so I'm very excited for that release. Definitely going to be trying out blue. I also have access to the purple Kaido deck. If you guys want to see the profile on the Kaido deck and you like this one, definitely let me know in the comments, and definitely like this video. So I'm just going to get right into the deck profile on my thought process on building these decks and why we're not going to run certain cards. So right off the bat, this is two starter decks put together, and one of the four cards we're not running is the 4 copies of Buggy. The main reason is a 1 mana 3k attack just isn't really going to have a lot of value for you. This game does play on a sort of curve. So you definitely want to hit like your 1-drop on your first turn, your 2-drop on your second turn, so on and so forth. But you also want your cards to have some type of intrinsic value out of them. Being that most of the leaders in the game are at 5,000 power, 3k is not going to do much unless you put 2 Dawn, which is like your energy, onto the card. And this is the type of game where you're going to want to do as much as possible with your energy, so long as it gives you some kind of value. And in terms of card games, value is, does it remove a threat? Does it let you draw a card? Does it let you search your deck and add something to your hand? Does it let you search your deck and summon something to the field? Those are better value out of your cards, rather than just something that's 1 mana and is pretty weak and will probably die the next turn. We're also not going to run this 2-drop guy. I know it's a trigger and it lets you search like the top cards out of your deck, but it doesn't add it to your hand. It just kind of rearranges your draw. And with the way the One Piece card game works in terms of combat flow and like the tempo between player versus player matches, you're gonna want to have cards that either do the things that I outlined before, rearranging your next like 3 cards, or maybe putting them on the bottom. Like, yeah, it does help to better your draw, but I would just rather outright draw the card or search. Again, also, it's 2 mana for 3k attack, which means if you want to get an attack in, it's 2 mana plus an additional 2 to put it at 5,000 attack power, which then may or may not take a card away from your opponent if they decide to use the counter to protect their leader. Just not all around good value. That also comes into play with the 4-drop promo Crocodile. If you guys are able to get the promo pack on entry, this is one of the cards that you can get on in that promo pack. He only gains blocker if you give it a Dawn. So that same concept kind of goes into this card as well. It's 4 mana for 5k, which isn't terrible, but he only gains blocker if he has the Dawn on it. So essentially it's a 5 mana card for a 5k guy that can block. At worst, he's just a vanilla 5k, which when you look at other cards in the deck, there's better vanilla attackers for less Dawn cost. So again, the value just is not there on this card. Pretty much everything else from the starter makes it into the list. So we're going to look at those ratios. But these are the cards I chose not to run, and that was like my explanation why. Crocodile is a blue leader, so he has 5k attack. And then he has an active main. Once per turn, you can Dawn -4, which is you can take 4 Dawn from anywhere on the field, put them back into the Dawn deck, and you get to bounce a card with a cost of 5 or less to the opponent's hand. So that's going to be your main attack. Like, he's going to be your main attacker, and he's the guy that you want to protect. Right off the bat, we're going to go right into the deck list. Off rip, Trafalgar Law. This is a 1 mana 1k blocker. Blockers are very good as far as like the starter meta is concerned. I think blockers will continue to be good as we get more sets, and they'll just get more powerful as the game proceeds. Cheap blockers are always very good to hold on to. You want to save these for the mid to late game. So Trafalgar Law is definitely a staple in that particular concept and idea. And here we have Jinbei. He's a 2-cost 4K vanilla. Again, that value conversation that we had earlier. 2 mana for 4,000. If you give it an additional Dawn, it's a 5K. So it's basically 3 mana for a 5K vanilla, which is not terrible considering the format that we're in with just the starters. And we'll see that as we proceed throughout the deck list. Which is also why we play Boa Hancock. She's a 3-cost blocker. She's also a trigger, so if they hit her off life, she'll come into play. But it's also not terrible. Like if she's in your hand, you can just play 3 for her, especially as the game goes on and you start hitting the higher Dawn, especially once you're on that 10 Dawn turn. 3-cost blockers are not terrible, especially considering that's all this deck really has. But, you know, you have the Trafalgar Law, you have the Boa Hancock, and then you have one other blocker in the deck. We have Edward Weevil, 3-cost 5K vanilla. Again, value. 3 mana for something that can potentially do damage to opposing leaders. And then you can give it additional Dawn to boost them up if you want to. But it's more about that like attrition game. The best card in the deck, Centauro. It's a 3-cost 4K. And then when you give it a Dawn, you pay 2. And you can summon Pacifista from your deck. Pacifista is a 4 mana 6K attacker, which is really, really good. And essentially, you basically get 2 cards for 5 mana. Again, that's really good value for your mana. And you can summon this, you know, if you go second, for example, you know, you're starting off with 2 Dawn, and then you go to 4, you can just attack, summon her, maybe summon Centauro in a 1-drop. And then if the Centauro survives, you're getting Pacifista for 2. And then as the turn goes on, the more they leave this card on the board, the more Centauro becomes a threat, and also the more Pacifista becomes a threat. Again, best card in the deck, and you definitely want to see it. Another really good card with incredible value is Dracula Mihawk, 4-cost 5K. When you give it a Dawn, when he attacks, you get to draw 2 and discard 2. That is really, really good. Lets you go through your deck. You're not too worried about the discard because you have 4 copies of Gecko Moria. Gecko Moria is a 4-cost 5K, and when Gecko's played, you can add a 7 Warlord of the Seas or a Thriller Bark Pirate character with a cost of 4 or less from your trash back to your hand. So you can pretty much dump any of the most of the deck basically. That's 4 costs and under, and get them back to your hand. It allows you to recycle cards like Marshall D. Teach. Marshall D. Teach is a 7 Warlord. It's also a 4-cost 4K. And this card's really good because on play, you get to bounce a card that is a cost 3 or less. And that's going to kind of become the theme of this deck, where it bounces cards and sends them back to your opponent's hand. Mostly because of ratios, we're only doing 2 copies of the 5-cost Crocodile. It's a 5-cost 6K. It has blocker. And when you give it a Dawn on that block, you can return a 2-cost or less on block on the opponent's board back to their hand. So you can get rid of weenies. It's really handy against red. And we're playing 2 mostly because of ratios. And there's other cards that do what he does in the deck better. And then, of course, your boss monster, Dofi, as we like to call him, Don Quixote do Flamingo. 7 mana, 7K. On play, he bounces a 7 or less back to their opponent's hand, or back to the controller's hand. So what's really cool is like you can have one on board and one in hand, and if you've managed to get rid of your opponent's threats, you can swing for 7K, pay 7, summon your Don Flamingo, and then bounce your own Don Flamingo back to your hand. So you always have a Don Flamingo threat in hand for your opponent. They're aware of it, and they know not to try to go too hard on the board. And you're always going to have some type of 7K attacking presence. Really cool combo that you can do with things like that. Speaking of cool combos, we have one of the coolest combo cards in the game. Well, counter, sorry. Love Love Mellow. In the counter step, you get one of your characters or leader to gain plus 4K power during the battle. And then if you have 3 or less cards in your hand, you get to draw a card. So this does count. Like if this is your hand, for example, you have your 4 cards and you play the Love Love Mellow to like block an attack. Now you have 3, you get to draw that card. So that's really cool. Comes in very handy if your hand size gets low, but for the most part it's there for the 4K boost. 3 copies of Sables. This is another bounce card. You return a character with a cost 7 or less to the hand. It's basically a 4 mana non-attack version of the Doflamingo card, which is why we play 3 and 3. And it's just really cool. And then the last set is 4 copies of Thrust Pad Cannon. Thrust Pad Cannon allows you to return a cost 3 or less to the owner's hand, just for 2. It is a counter card, so you can play it on your opponent's turn during the counter step. This is why it's important to manage that tempo, manage that control, and do as much as you can with your Dawn, so that whenever you leave 2 open, your opponent, and they're playing against blue, your opponent knows, hey, I gotta watch out for this card. Anyway, so that's pretty much like the deck build and the reasonings behind the ratios. If you guys really like this content, you want me to see me do more One Piece stuff, let me know in the comments. Definitely subscribe, like. I mostly do Dragon Ball. I'm thinking about adding One Piece. I also play some video games. I'll be doing some more streams on YouTube as well. So if you're into that, you know, stick around, enjoy the ride. But we'll have more TCG content as the cards come out and they're made available. And I'll catch you then. Thank you.